My name is Ashley, I'm 28, and until last month, I thought I knew what betrayal felt like. Then my brother's fiancée Megan assaulted me at her final dress fitting, leaving me with a concussion and bruised ribs. The worst part? My brother Jason, who had been my protector since childhood, sent me a text that shattered my heart. Stay away from my fiancé and our wedding. You're no longer welcome. How could the person who knew me best believe I was the villain in this nightmare? Before I continue my story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit that subscribe button, and stay with me because what happened next changed everything I thought I knew about family loyalty. Growing up, Jason was more than just my big brother. He was my hero. With just 3 years between us, we were inseparable despite the typical sibling squabbles. He was the one who taught me to ride a bike, who defended me against neighborhood bullies, and who always made me feel safe. Our childhood in suburban Massachusetts was relatively normal until the earthquake that changed everything, our parents' divorce. I was 13 and Jason was 16 when our parents sat us down in the living room. The tension had been building for months, but nothing prepared us for hearing they were separating. Dad had accepted a job in Chicago, while Mom would stay in Boston with us. That night, I crawled into Jason's room sobbing, and instead of kicking me out like most teenage boys might, he let me stay. "We'll get through this together, Ash," he promised, and he meant it. The divorce hit both of us hard, but it cemented our bond. While our parents were wrapped up in their own emotional turmoil, we became each other's constant. Jason drove me to soccer practice when Mom was working late. I proofread his college application essays. We developed our own traditions. Sunday morning pancakes became our thing, a small ritual of normalcy in the chaos. When Jason left for college at Boston University, I was devastated but determined not to show it. He called me every Wednesday night without fail, and whenever he came home for weekends, he made time for me despite having a growing social circle of his own. I followed his footsteps to BU 3 years later, though our paths diverged academically. He pursued business and marketing, while I discovered my passion for physical therapy. Throughout college, Jason continued to be my confidant. When my first serious boyfriend cheated on me sophomore year, Jason drove to campus at midnight with ice cream and my favorite movies. "He never deserved you, Ash," he assured me as I cried on his shoulder. That was Jason, always there, always dependable. After graduation, we both settled in Boston. Jason climbed the corporate ladder at a digital marketing agency, eventually becoming their youngest executive director. I completed my DPT program and secured a position at Boston Medical Center, specializing in trauma rehabilitation. Despite our demanding careers, we maintained our Sunday pancake tradition at least twice a month. Our adult friendship was something I treasured. We weren't just siblings by blood but genuine friends by choice. My dating life had its ups and downs. A few months before meeting Megan, I had ended a 3-year relationship with Kyle, a surgeon I'd met at the hospital. The breakup was amicable but left me questioning my judgment. Jason had been supportive as always, letting me crash at his apartment for a week while I processed my emotions. It was at a charity gala for his company about 18 months ago that Jason first met Megan Taylor. He brought me as his plus one since he'd recently ended things with his previous girlfriend. "Keep me company and help me network," he'd asked. Little did I know that night would set in motion events that would nearly destroy our relationship. Megan approached us at the bar, immediately focusing on Jason. I noticed how she barely acknowledged my presence, but I dismissed it as normal when someone is attracted to someone else. She was undeniably stunning, tall with flowing auburn hair, designer dress, and the kind of confidence that commanded attention. She worked as a stylist for a luxury fashion magazine, with connections to Boston's elite social circles. "You must be so proud of your little brother," she said to me after Jason introduced us. When he corrected her, "Actually, Ashley's my younger sister," Megan's smile tightened just slightly. It was such a brief moment that I questioned if I'd imagined it. Over the next few months, Jason fell hard and fast. Our Sunday brunches became less frequent as he spent more time with Megan. When we did get together, all he talked about was how amazing she was. I was genuinely happy for him. He deserved someone special. But something about Megan made me uneasy. It was nothing I could articulate clearly. Just small moments when her mask seemed to slip. Like the time she accidentally spilled red wine on my white blouse at Jason's birthday dinner. Or how she'd refer to my job as so helpful for people who aren't athletic enough for real sports. Or how she'd interrupt whenever I shared childhood stories about Jason and me. I kept these observations to myself, not wanting to be the stereotypical disapproving sister. 6 months into their relationship, Jason announced they were engaged. Seemed fast. But he was so happy I pushed aside my concerns. "She's the one, Ash," he beamed, and I hugged him tightly, determined to support his choice. At their engagement party, Megan surprised me by asking me to be a bridesmaid. "You're so important to Jason," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. "I want us to be close too." I agreed immediately, hopeful this was a turning point in our relationship. What followed was 6 months of wedding planning that gradually revealed more of Megan's true nature. She became increasingly controlling of Jason's time and decisions. Our text conversations dwindled, and when we did speak, he seemed to be reading from a script. Megan thinks prefaced most of his opinions now. Still, I tried. I genuinely tried to connect with Megan, inviting her for coffee, sending thoughtful texts about wedding details, complimenting her choices. Some days she would respond warmly, and I'd think we were making progress. Other days she'd be cold and dismissive, making me feel like an outsider in my brother's life. I didn't realize then that this was just the beginning, that the woman my brother loved was about to reveal herself in ways that would leave both physical and emotional scars none of us were prepared for. The first major crack in the facade appeared during the planning of Megan's bridal shower. As a bridesmaid, I was expected to help with preparations, but Megan's maid of honor, Courtney, made it clear my input wasn't welcome. Megan has very specific tastes. Courtney informed me when I suggested a venue. We should probably stick with her first choice. Every idea I contributed was shot down with similar dismissals. When I offered to handle the party favors, something I was actually good at, Courtney laughed. Megan already asked her cousin. She wants things to look professional. I swallowed my pride and tried to be helpful in other ways, but it became increasingly obvious that I was a bridesmaid in name only. The final shower arrangements, an extravagant affair at an exclusive country club with a champagne fountain and personalized macarons, bore no trace of my suggestions. Even the date was set for a weekend I had mentioned I was scheduled to present at a physical therapy conference, forcing me to cancel my professional commitment. It was the only date that worked for Megan's aunts, Courtney explained, though I later discovered they'd changed the date after I'd confirmed my availability. The bridesmaid dress selection was another exercise in humiliation. Megan had chosen different styles for each bridesmaid to complement our individual figures. Somehow, I ended up with a sickly chartreuse dress with an unflattering empire waist and cap sleeves that made my athletic shoulders look disproportionately broad. "It's perfect for you," Megan insisted, while selecting sleek, flattering gowns for her friends. When I gently asked if I could try a different style in the same color, her eyes hardened. "I've put a lot of thought into these selections. Ashley, don't you want your brother's wedding to be perfect?" I was adjusting the dress in the boutique's changing room when I overheard Megan talking to Courtney just outside. God, is she going to complain about everything? This is why I didn't want Jason's family involved. "At least you only have to deal with her," Courtney replied. "His parents seem even worse." "Well, his dad's barely in the picture and I've got his mom wrapped around my finger. It's just Ashley who thinks she has some special claim on him because they're so close." Megan's voice dripped with mockery. "Once we're married, that's going to change." I froze, pin still in hand, unsure if I should confront them or pretend I hadn't heard. Before I could decide, they moved away, their conversation shifting to flower arrangements. That night I called Jason, trying to sound casual as I asked how involved he was in the wedding planning. "Honestly, I'm staying out of it. Megan has a vision, and it makes her happy to handle the details." He sounded distracted. "Why? Is something wrong?" I hesitated. "The bridesmaid dresses are unique." He laughed. "Yeah, Megan mentioned you weren't thrilled. Come on, Ash, it's just one day. Can't you wear something you don't love for a few hours? For me?" And there it was, the subtle shift in his perspective. Suddenly, my discomfort was an inconvenience to his happiness. I backed down immediately. Of course, it's not a big deal. The bachelorette party planning brought more tension. Megan wanted a lavish weekend in Miami, with costs exceeding $2,000 per bridesmaid. When I mentioned the expense might be difficult for some, including me, I was still paying off student loans. Megan's response was cutting. If it's too much for you, maybe you should sit this one out. I don't want anyone there who's going to bring negative energy. I dipped into my savings and went to Miami, determined to make the best of it. But throughout the weekend I was excluded from photos, seated away from the main group at dinners, and repeatedly introduced as Jason's sister, rather than by my name or as a bridesmaid. When I tried to join conversations, Megan would change the subject or suddenly need to move locations. By Sunday morning the message was clear. My presence was tolerated, not welcomed. On the flight home, Courtney, slightly drunk from airport mimosas, leaned over to me. "You know Megan really doesn't like you, right?" she said, her voice a conspirator's whisper. "She only asked you to be a bridesmaid because Jason insisted. She calls you the watchdog when you're not around. Why are you telling me this?" I asked, my throat tight. Courtney shrugged. "Just thought you should know what you're dealing with. Megan always gets what she wants. Always." I spent that night drafting and deleting text messages to Jason. How could I explain what was happening without sounding like the jealous sister? In the end I sent something mild. "Can we grab coffee this week? Just the two of us." His response came the next day. "Super swamped with work and wedding stuff. Maybe after the honeymoon? Megan says hi." That was when I realized how isolated I'd become. Jason had always been my rock, my confidant. And now he was slipping away. What hurt most was that he didn't even seem to notice. The rehearsal dinner, held the weekend before the wedding at an upscale steakhouse, was the final straw. I arrived early to help with place cards, only to discover my seat was at the farthest table from the bride and groom, next to distant relatives and work colleagues. When I mentioned the oversight to Megan, thinking it was a mistake, she smiled coldly. The seating chart was very complicated. We had to consider a lot of factors. Throughout the evening, Megan's parents made a point of acknowledging every member of the wedding party except me. When it came time for toasts, the microphone was passed to childhood friends, college roommates, and even Megan's personal trainer. Though I had prepared something heartfelt, I was never invited to speak. As dessert was served, I excused myself to the restroom, fighting back tears. In the hallway, I ran into Jason coming out of the men's room. "Hey, great dinner, right?" he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Jason, what's going on? I feel like I'm being erased from your life." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. His expression shifted from surprise to discomfort. "What are you talking about? You're here, aren't you?" "Physically, yes. But when was the last time we actually talked?" "Just us." He checked his watch. "Ash, this isn't the time. Everyone's waiting. Everyone except me, apparently." I hated how petty I sounded, but months of frustration were boiling over. "Megan has been pushing me away since day one, and you don't even see it." Jason's face hardened. "You're overreacting. Megan's just stressed about the wedding. Not everything is about you, Ashley. That's not fair." I've bent over backward trying to connect with her, and... "Stop." He raised his hand. "I don't want to hear it. If you can't be happy for me, maybe you shouldn't be part of this at all." He walked back toward the dining room, leaving me stunned in the hallway. That night, sometimes people get blinded. What should I do? Try one more time to talk to him calmly? And if that doesn't work? She paused. Sometimes we have to let people make their own mistakes. I took her advice and called Jason the next morning. The conversation quickly turned heated. "I'm not attacking Megan," I insisted. "I'm trying to tell you how I feel." "Everything was fine until you started creating drama," he shot back. "Megan's been nothing but inclusive, and you've been distant and critical." "That's not true, Jason. She's been." "I don't want to hear it, Ashley. The wedding is in 2 weeks. Either support us or stay home." He hung up and I sat there, phone in hand, wondering how we'd come to this. Little did I know that the worst was yet to come, and that within 24 hours, our relationship would be damaged in ways I couldn't imagine. The morning of Megan's final dress fitting dawned bright and cold. A perfect New England autumn day. Despite our heated conversation the previous night, I was determined to fulfill my bridesmaid duties. This wasn't just about Megan. It was about supporting Jason, even if he couldn't see what was happening. I arrived at Elegance Bridal Boutique at exactly 10 a.m., the time specified in Megan's group text to all bridesmaids. The shop was quieter than I expected. Usually, these final fittings were celebratory affairs with champagne and excited chatter. Instead, I found only Megan in the private viewing area, scrolling through her phone. "Where is everyone?" asked, setting down my purse. Megan looked up, her expression unreadable. There was a change of plan. "The others are coming at noon." I wanted to handle some details first. Something felt off, but I pushed the feeling aside. "Well, I'm here to help with whatever you need." "How thoughtful," she replied, her tone making the compliment sound like anything but. The boutique owner, Valerie, brought out Megan's gown. A custom Vera Wang creation that had cost more than my annual rent. It was stunning with intricate beadwork and a cathedral train. Even I had to admit Megan had exquisite taste. "I'll get your bridesmaid dress too, Ashley," Valerie said. "We can do your final adjustments while we're waiting for the others." "Actually," Megan interjected, "could you give us a few minutes? I need to discuss something with Ashley privately, and maybe check if my veil has arrived." Valerie nodded and disappeared into the back room, leaving us alone among the racks of white tulle and satin. An uncomfortable silence stretched between us. I decided to use this rare private moment to clear the air. "Megan, I know things have been tense, but I really do want us to get along for Jason's sake. Maybe we could start fresh." She set her phone down slowly, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the glass table. "You know what I find interesting, Ashley? How you always position yourself as the reasonable one, the supportive sister." Her voice was eerily calm. "It's quite the performance." "It's not a performance. Jason is important to me. Jason is important to me too. He's going to be my husband." "My husband." She stood up, smoothing her designer jeans. "But you can't accept that, can you? You've always needed to be the most important person in his life." I felt my chest tighten. "That's not true. I'm happy Jason found someone." "Stop lying." The sudden shift in her volume made me flinch. "I've seen right through you from day one. The sad little looks, the inside jokes, the constant reminiscing about your childhood. All designed to remind Jason that you were there first." "Megan, I think you're misinterpreting." "I'm not stupid, Ashley." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I've always hated you. Jason was mine the moment we met, and you've been in the way ever since." The raw hostility in her eyes shocked me. This wasn't wedding stress or typical family tension. This was something deeper, darker. "You've been trying to sabotage this wedding from the beginning," she continued, questioning my choices, making yourself the victim, planting doubts in Jason's mind. "I've never done any of that," I protested, backing up slightly. "If anything, I've been trying extra hard to support your decisions." Even when what?" She took another step toward me. "Even when I'm being unreasonable. Is that what you tell Jason when you're alone with him? Poor Megan, she's so demanding, so difficult." "No, I don't talk about you to Jason at all anymore, because he clearly doesn't want to hear it." My frustration was building, overriding my caution. "And honestly, Megan, yes, some of your behavior has been difficult. You've excluded me, belittled me, and turned my brother against me. So excuse me if I'm not thrilled about celebrating that." Something shifted in her expression. A flash of raw fury replacing the controlled anger. "You self-righteous bitch," she hissed. "You think you know Jason better than I do? You think your sad little sibling bond can compete with what we have? This isn't a competition." I insisted, my voice rising despite my best efforts. "That's what you don't understand. I'm not trying to compete with you for Jason's attention. There's room for both of us in his life." "Not anymore," Megan said, her voice suddenly calm again. "After the wedding, things are going to change. Jason and I are moving to Chicago for my new job, something I haven't even told the other bridesmaids yet. We'll visit Boston for holidays, of course, but otherwise..." She shrugged. "Long-distance relationships are so hard to maintain, don't you think?" The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Jason hasn't mentioned any move. My voice sounded small even to my own ears. Because I asked him not to tell anyone yet. See how loyal he is to me. Her smile was triumphant. He's chosen me, Ashley. Over everyone. Even you. I don't believe you, I said, though doubt had already taken root. Jason wouldn't make a decision like that without discussing it with me. The old Jason wouldn't. My Jason already has. She checked her watch theatrically. You know what? I think it's best if you leave. Tell Valerie there was a misunderstanding about the schedule. Something in me snapped. All the months of manipulation, of watching my brother slip away, of being vilified for simply existing, it was too much. No, I said firmly. I'm not going anywhere. I'm a bridesmaid in this wedding. I'm Jason's sister. And I'm not going to let you push me out of his life without a fight. Megan's face contorted with rage. Before I could react, she shoved me hard with both hands. I stumbled backward, catching myself against a mannequin display. Get out, she screamed. Get out now. Stop it, Megan. I held my hands up defensively. This is insane. I'm not going to fight with you. She lunged forward again, grabbing my shoulders and pushing me with surprising strength. I lost my balance, falling backward into the display of mannequins. They toppled like dominoes, and I crashed to the floor amid a tangle of metal stands and dismembered display figures. Pain shot through my head as it connected with the metal base of a rack. The room spun momentarily, and I felt something warm trickle down my temple. Blood. Look what you made me do, Megan said, standing over me, her chest heaving. I tried to get up, but a sharp pain in my ribs made me gasp. Megan, please stop. Instead of backing off, she kicked me, a deliberate, calculated strike to my side that left me breathless with pain. You've ruined everything, she spat. You couldn't just accept your place. The boutique door chimed, and Valerie's voice called out, Everything okay out there? I heard a crash. Megan's demeanor transformed instantly. She mussed her hair, tore at the sleeve of her own blouse, and to my horror, dragged her fingernails across her own cheek, leaving angry red scratches. Valerie rushed in, stopping short at the scene of destruction. Oh my God! What happened? Megan burst into theatrical tears. She attacked me. I told her about Chicago and she just lost it. Look what she did to my face. What? No. I tried to sit up, wincing at the pain. She pushed me. She kicked me while I was down. Valerie looked between us, clearly uncertain who to believe. The elegant bride-to-be with scratches on her face, or the woman bleeding on the floor surrounded by broken displays. I'm calling an ambulance, Valerie said firmly. And the police. Please do, Megan said, her voice quivering perfectly. I want to press charges. She grabbed her purse and phone. I need to call Jason. My fiancé needs to know what his sister has done. As Megan stepped outside to make the call that would shatter my relationship with my brother, I lay there amid the wreckage, my head throbbing, ribs screaming in pain, and a devastating realization taking hold. Megan had won. She had orchestrated this perfectly, and I had walked right into her trap. The fluorescent lights of the emergency room seemed unnecessarily harsh as I lay on the gurney, waiting for the doctor to return with my CT scan results. The curtain separating me from the next patient did little to muffle the sounds of the busy monitors beeping, nurses calling out to each other, a child crying somewhere down the hall. My phone, miraculously unbroken in the fall, showed 5 unanswered calls to Jason, each time straight to voicemail. The last message I'd left was barely coherent through my tears. Jason, please. Just let me explain what happened. It wasn't how Megan said. Please call me back. A young doctor with kind eyes pulled back the curtain. Ms. Mitchell? I have your results. Good news, no skull fracture, but you do have a concussion. Those bruised ribs are going to be painful for a while, and that sprained wrist needs to be immobilized. She glanced at the police officer waiting patiently in the corner of my cubicle. Are you feeling up to making your statement now? Officer Reynolds approached, notebook in hand. Take your time. Ms. Mitchell, just tell me exactly what happened at the bridal shop. I recounted everything as clearly as I could. Megan's revelation about Chicago, her sudden aggression, the push, the fall, the kick while I was down, and her self-inflicted scratches. As I spoke, Officer Reynolds's expression remained neutral, but I could sense his skepticism. So you're saying the bride-to-be assaulted you unprovoked, then injured herself to frame you? He clarified when I finished. Put that way, it sounded ridiculous even to my own ears. I know how it sounds, but yes, that's exactly what happened. He nodded, jotting something down. Miss Taylor has given a different statement. She claims you became enraged when she mentioned moving to Chicago with your brother, verbally abused her, then physically attacked her when she asked you to leave. That's not true, I insisted, wincing as I tried to sit up straighter. The boutique owner must have seen something. There might be security cameras. We're looking into that, he assured me. In the meantime, I recommend staying away from Ms. Taylor. If what you're saying is true, further contact could escalate the situation. After being discharged with prescriptions for pain medication and strict instructions for concussion monitoring, I found myself in the back of a rideshare, heading to my empty apartment. The driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror, my bruised face and hospital bracelet making him visibly uncomfortable. My phone buzzed with a text message. For a moment, hope flared that Jason had finally responded. Instead, I saw his name, but the message crushed whatever optimism I had left. Stay away from my fiancé and our wedding. You're no longer welcome. I can't believe you would attack Megan out of jealousy. Get help. A sob escaped before I could stop it, startling the driver. Sorry, I mumbled, turning to stare out the window as tears streamed down my face. Back in my apartment, the reality of my situation hit full force. My head throbbed, my ribs ached with every breath, and my own brother, the person who had been my constant since childhood, believed I was violent and jealous. I tried calling him again, but this time my number had been blocked. I curled up on my couch, too sore to make it to the bedroom, and let the tears come. How had everything gone so catastrophically wrong? I must have fallen asleep from sheer emotional exhaustion because the next thing I knew, someone was knocking at my door. My best friend Kayla stood in the hallway, grocery bags in hand, her expression shifting from concern to shock as she took in my appearance. Oh my God, Ashley, what happened to you? She pushed past me into the apartment, setting down the bags and turning to examine my face. Your brother called me, but he didn't say you were injured. What did he tell you? I asked, dreading the answer. Kayla's hesitation told me everything. He said you had some kind of breakdown at Megan's dress fitting, that you attacked her and they had to call the police. And you believe that? The hurt in my voice was unmistakable. Of course not. That's why I'm here. I know you, Ash. You wouldn't hurt anyone. Especially not over something like this. She guided me back to the couch. Now tell me what really happened. For the next hour I recounted everything. From the early warning signs with Megan to the horrifying confrontation at the boutique. Kayla listened without interrupting, her expression growing increasingly troubled. We need to get this on record, she said when I finished. Have you thought about pressing charges? What would be the point? It's her word against mine, and Jason has already chosen his side. What about security footage from the boutique? Most high-end shops have cameras these days. I hadn't considered that possibility. I could ask the police officer who took my statement to check. Do it now, Kayla urged, before evidence mysteriously disappears. While I called Officer Reynolds, Kayla unpacked the groceries she brought. Soup, pain relievers, ice packs, and my favorite comfort foods. The small kindness brought fresh tears to my eyes. The next few days passed in a blur of pain medication, fitful sleep, and creeping despair. My parents got involved, my mother flying in from Boston's suburbs to stay with me, my father calling from Chicago with a maddeningly neutral stance. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding on both sides, he said, his lawyer's caution evident. Did you perhaps say something that Megan might have misconstrued as threatening? Dad, she kicked me while I was bleeding on the floor, I replied, too exhausted to keep the bitterness from my voice. What could I possibly have said to justify that? My mother was more supportive, her fury on my behalf both validating and concerning. I'm calling Jason right now, she declared after seeing my injuries. Please don't, I begged. It will only make things worse. He needs to come to the truth on his own. Meanwhile, the digital fallout was spreading. Jason had posted a vague but damning statement on social media. Heartbroken that someone I trusted would try to ruin the happiest day of my life out of their own issues. Wedding still on, but our guest list is smaller and stronger. Mutual friends started taking sides. Most didn't reach out to hear my version before unfollowing me. The few who did seemed skeptical of my account. After all, why would a bride attack her fiancé's sister 2 weeks before the wedding? It made no logical sense unless you understood the months of calculated isolation that had preceded it. Meghan's family escalated the situation by threatening legal action against me. A formal-looking letter arrived from their attorney, demanding I stay at least 500 feet from Meghan and any wedding venues, warning of severe legal consequences if I attempted to disrupt the celebration. The irony was suffocating. I was being painted as the unstable aggressor while lying on my couch with injuries inflicted by the supposed victim. Officer Reynolds called on the third day. Mitchell, I wanted to update you. We've requested the security footage from Elegance Bridal, but there's been a complication. Ms. Taylor's attorney has filed a motion to block the release, citing privacy concerns during a bridal fitting. Can they do that? I asked, panic rising. They can try, but it will likely be overruled. These things take time, unfortunately. Time was the one thing I didn't have. The wedding was 11 days away, and with each passing day the narrative solidified. Ashley had a jealous breakdown and attacked poor Meghan. On the 4th day after the assault, I made a decision. With Kayla's help, I contacted a lawyer of my own, Sarah Donovan, a former college classmate who specialized in personal injury and assault cases. This isn't just about clearing your name, Sarah advised during our consultation. You've suffered genuine injuries that have affected your ability to work. The psychological trauma alone warrants action. I don't want money, I insisted. I just want the truth to come out. I want my brother back. Sarah's expression softened. The truth often follows legal pressure, Ashley. Let's start by filing a formal charge of assault against Meghan Taylor. That afternoon, I returned to the police station and officially pressed charges. The weight of taking this irrevocable step settled heavily on my shoulders as I signed the paperwork. There would be no going back now. No possibility of quietly resolving this within the family. As I left the station, my phone buzzed with a notification. The boutique owner Valerie had left a voicemail. Ashley, this is Valerie from Elegance Bridal. I've been thinking about what happened and, well, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but our security system did capture everything. The police have the footage now. I just thought you should know. What I saw on that video doesn't match what Ms. Taylor claimed. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I was worried about the shop's reputation if we got involved in a legal dispute. That was wrong of me. For the first time in days, a small flicker of hope ignited in my chest. The truth was recorded. There was proof. But would it be enough to break through whatever spell Meghan had cast over my brother? Or had she so completely poisoned his perception of me that even video evidence wouldn't matter? I was about to find out. Against my lawyer's advice, I sent Jason one final text. I've pressed charges against Meghan for assault. The boutique has security footage of what really happened. I'm not asking you to believe me without evidence anymore. Just promise you'll watch the video when the police release it. That's all I'm asking. I love you. The message was delivered, but no response came. All I could do now was wait and hope that the brother who had once promised we'd get through anything together would at least be willing to look at the truth with his own eyes. 3 days of silence stretched my nerves to the breaking point. 3 days of jumping every time my phone buzzed, only to be disappointed when it wasn't Jason. 3 days of checking social media obsessively, looking for any sign that the narrative was shifting. Nothing changed, except the pain in my ribs gradually transformed from sharp and immediate to a persistent, dull ache that flared with every deep breath. My lawyer, Sarah, called with an update that should have been encouraging. The judge denied Meghan's motion to block the security footage. The police have it now, and it will be entered into evidence. Have they watched it? Does it clearly show what happened? I asked, desperate for confirmation. The detective I spoke with confirmed it shows the entire incident, Sarah said carefully. But they won't discuss specifics yet. That's actually a good sign, Ashley. If the footage contradicted your statement, they'd likely be questioning you further. It was cold comfort. The evidence might eventually clear my name legally, but what about with Jason? With our friends and extended family? Some damage couldn't be undone with security footage. Kayla had practically moved into my apartment, sleeping on my couch and fielding calls from concerned colleagues when I couldn't face explaining why I needed time off from the rehabilitation center. On the third evening, she returned from a grocery run with an odd expression. "What's wrong?" I asked, immediately sensing something had happened. "I ran into Michael at the store," she said, setting down the bags. Michael had been Jason's best friend since college and was serving as his best man. "He asked about you." I sat up straighter, wincing at the movement. "What did he say?" "He seemed confused. Said Jason's been acting strange, that Megan's been incredibly upset and won't leave his side. The wedding planning has apparently turned chaotic. They've changed venues last minute, because Megan insists the original place has bad energy now." "Did you tell him what really happened?" I asked. Kayla nodded. "I did." "He didn't say much, but he was listening. Really listening, Ash. And he mentioned that Jason's been drinking a lot, which isn't like him." It was a small crack in Megan's carefully constructed narrative, but it was something. For the first time since the assault, I allowed myself to feel a glimmer of hope that not everyone had unquestioningly accepted her version of events. Later that night, my phone rang with an unknown number. Normally I'd let it go to voicemail, but something compelled me to answer. "Ashley? It's Michael." My heart skipped. "Michael. Hi. Listen, I don't have much time," he said, his voice low as if he didn't want to be overheard. "Kayla told me what happened. I've known you and Jason for years, and what she described doesn't sound like you at all." "It's not," I said, my voice catching. "Michael, I would never." "I believe you," he interrupted. "And I think I can get Jason to watch that security video. He's not in a good place right now. Megan doesn't let him out of her sight, monitors his phone. I'm worried about him." A chill ran through me. "What do you mean monitors his phone?" "She checks his messages, answers calls for him sometimes, says it's because they're so connected they don't need privacy from each other. It's messed up, Ashley." The controlling behavior I'd glimpsed in Megan's treatment of Jason was apparently worse than I'd realized. "Can you get him alone? Just for an hour?" "I'm trying. Bachelor party is supposed to be tomorrow night. Megan wanted to cancel it after what happened, but I insisted it's tradition. If I can get him away from her, get a few drinks in him, maybe I can talk some sense into him." "Thank you, Michael," I said, genuine gratitude washing over me. "Just be careful. Megan isn't what she seems." "Yeah, I'm starting to see that. I'll be in touch." After hanging up, I told Kayla about the conversation. "Should I be hopeful?" I asked her. "Or am I setting myself up for more disappointment?" "Be cautiously optimistic," she advised, "but prepare for either outcome." The next day crawled by in agonizing slowness. I'd never wished so hard for a text message in my life. By nightfall, my nerves were so frayed that Kayla suggested a movie marathon to distract me. We were halfway through the second film when my phone finally buzzed. A text from Michael. "Mission accomplished. Check your email in 20 minutes. 20 minutes later, an email arrived from a detective. "Ms. Mitchell, as part of our investigation into the incident at Elegance Bridal Boutique, we've reviewed the security footage and have some follow-up questions. Please call me at your earliest convenience. Additionally, we've discovered that Ms. Taylor has a prior history of assault charges that were subsequently dropped. This information may be relevant to your case." I read the email 3 times, my hands shaking. "Megan has a history of assault charges," I told Kayla. "The police found out." "Holy shit," Kayla breathed. "Ashley, you need to get this information to Jason immediately." I hesitated. Michael said to check my email, not to contact Jason. Maybe he has a plan. We didn't have to wait long to find out. At 11:37 p.m., my phone lit up with Jason's name. Not a text this time, but an actual call. I answered so quickly I nearly dropped the phone. "Jason." Silence for a beat, then. "I saw the video." His voice sounded hollow, shell-shocked. Relief flooded through me so intensely I felt lightheaded. "Oh, thank God. Why didn't you tell me she had hurt you that badly? His voice cracked. The video. You were on the ground bleeding. And she kicked you. She kicked you, Ash. I tried to tell you, I said softly. You wouldn't listen. He made a sound somewhere between a groan and a sob. I know. God, I know. Michael showed me the police report too. Did you know Megan had 2 previous assault charges? Both from ex-boyfriends, both dropped suddenly. I just found out today. I admitted. Jason. I'm so sorry. You're sorry. He sounded incredulous. I'm the one who should be apologizing. I believed her over my own sister. I saw your injuries at the hospital and still somehow convinced myself you were the aggressor. What kind of brother does that make me? The pain in his voice was unbearable. Despite everything, I couldn't stand hearing him so broken. A human one. She manipulated you, Jason. She's been doing it for months. I confronted her after seeing the video, he continued. I thought maybe somehow there was an explanation, that it wasn't as bad as it looked. But do you know what she did? What? She laughed. Then she cried. Then she laughed again and said you've been trying to come between us from the beginning. When I told her it was over, that the wedding was off, she smashed my laptop and said I'd regret choosing you over her. His voice shook. Who is this person, Ash? How did I not see who she really was? Love blinds us sometimes, I said, remembering all the red flags I'd ignored in my own past relationships. And she was careful. She showed you exactly what you wanted to see. Can I come over? He asked suddenly. I need to see you. To apologize properly. I glanced at Kayla, who nodded encouragingly. Yes. Of course. 40 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. Jason stood in the hallway, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His eyes were bloodshot, his normally impeccable appearance disheveled. When he saw my face, the fading bruise on my temple, the still swollen cheekbone, he visibly flinched. Ashley, he whispered, his voice breaking. And then my big brother, who had always been my protector, my rock, collapsed into tears. I pulled him into the apartment, ignoring the protest from my ribs as I hugged him. Kayla quietly excused herself, saying she'd give us privacy and check in tomorrow. Once Jason had calmed enough to speak coherently, we settled on the couch with mugs of tea. I called off the wedding, he said, staring into his mug. Told everyone the truth, that Megan assaulted you, and I couldn't be with someone capable of that kind of violence and deception. How did people react? I asked. Shock mostly. Disbelief. Her family is furious, threatening lawsuits for defamation. But the police confirmed they have the video evidence and are pursuing charges, so. He shrugged helplessly. Some friends have been supportive. Others think I'm making a huge mistake. Michael's been incredible through all of this. I can imagine, I said, making a mental note to thank Michael properly when this was all over. Megan was arrested tonight, Jason continued. Assault and battery charges. She'll probably make bail by morning, but still. It's real now. We sat in silence for a moment, the magnitude of everything that had happened, and all that was still to come settling over us. I should have trusted you, Jason finally said. From the beginning, I should have seen what she was doing to us. You tried to tell me so many times in so many ways and I dismissed you. Called you jealous, dramatic. What kind of brother does that? The kind who was being manipulated by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. I repeated firmly. Jason, I don't blame you. I'm just grateful you know the truth now. How can you forgive me so easily? He asked, genuine confusion in his eyes. I considered the question carefully. Because you're my brother. Because when I needed you most in the past, you were always there. And because I know that if our positions were reversed, if I had been the one manipulated, you would forgive me too. He reached for my hand, careful to avoid the sprained wrist. I don't deserve you, Ash. Probably not, I agreed with a small smile. But you're stuck with me anyway. It wasn't a complete resolution. There would be court dates ahead, uncomfortable conversations with friends and family, and a long journey of rebuilding trust. But as Jason and I sat together in my small apartment, the first pieces of our shattered relationship beginning to mend, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before Megan entered our lives. Hope. Physical recovery proved more straightforward than emotional healing. My follow-up appointment revealed that my injuries were actually worse than initially diagnosed. The bruised ribs were actually hairline fractures, and the concussion symptoms weren't improving as quickly as expected. The doctor ordered additional rest and recommended I take at least 3 weeks off work. But my patients need me, I protested, thinking of the trauma survivors I worked with daily. I can't just abandon their rehabilitation programs. You can't help them if you're not healed yourself, the doctor replied gently. Pushing too hard now could extend your recovery time significantly. Professionally, the timing couldn't have been worse. I'd recently been assigned to lead a new spinal cord injury program at the rehabilitation center, an opportunity I'd worked toward for years. My supervisor was understanding but concerned. Take the time you need, Ashley, she said during our phone call. The program will still be here when you're better. But I need you at 100% for this role. I agreed reluctantly, arranging for colleagues to cover my patients temporarily. The enforced idleness was its own kind of torture, too much time to replay events, to question if I could have handled things differently, to wonder what might have happened if the security camera hadn't been working that day. Jason called or visited daily, bringing food, running errands, and clearly desperate to make amends. His constant presence was both comforting and occasionally suffocating. I could see him watching me, gauging my reactions, searching for signs of lingering resentment. The truth was more complicated than simple forgiveness or anger. I loved my brother, but the trust between us had been fundamentally shaken. 2 weeks after the confrontation, I finally gathered the courage to address it directly. Jason had brought over dinner, and we were eating in uncomfortable silence when I set down my fork. We need to talk about what happens next, I said. Between us, I mean. Jason looked up, anxiety flashing across his face. What do you want to happen? I want us to rebuild, I said carefully. But honestly, Jason, I'm struggling with some things. Tell me, he urged. Whatever it is, I can take it. I took a deep breath. When you believed Megan over me, it wasn't just about the assault. It was the culmination of months of you dismissing my concerns, ignoring red flags, pulling away from our relationship. I felt like I was losing you long before that day at the boutique. Jason flinched but nodded. You're right. Looking back, I can see how she isolated me from everyone, especially you. But Ash, that doesn't excuse my actions. I chose to believe her. I chose to send that horrible text. I have to own that. His accountability was a step in the right direction, but more difficult conversations lay ahead. I suggested we try family therapy. And to my surprise, Jason agreed immediately. I'll do whatever it takes, he promised. I don't want to lose you, Ash. Our first therapy session with Dr. Elena Martinez was awkward but productive. She created a safe space for us to express painful truths without judgment. Jason, what do you think made you vulnerable to Megan's manipulation? Dr. Martinez asked during our second session. He considered the question thoughtfully. I think I was at a point in my life where I felt like everyone was moving forward except me. Friends getting married, having kids, buying houses. Megan represented this perfect future I thought I wanted. She was beautiful, ambitious, connected to all the right people. When she chose me, it felt like validation. And what about your relationship with Ashley? Was there tension there before Megan? Jason shook his head. No, that's what makes this so awful. Ashley has always been my closest relationship. Megan saw that as a threat from day one. Dr. Martinez turned to me. Ashley, what do you need from Jason to rebuild trust? I need him to really see me again, I said after a moment. Not just as his sister he needs to make amends to, but as a whole person. And I need to know that next time, if there is a next time, he'll at least hear me out before deciding I'm wrong. These sessions became the foundation for our healing process. Slowly, incrementally, we began to reconnect. Not as the inseparable duo we'd been before, but as adults with a deeper understanding of our dynamic and its vulnerabilities. Meanwhile, the legal proceedings against Megan moved forward. The restraining order was granted easily once the judge viewed the security footage. The criminal case would take longer, but my lawyer was optimistic. The evidence is compelling, Sarah assured me. And with her history of similar behavior, The prosecution has a strong case. Meghan's family continued to apply pressure, alternating between threats and settlement offers to drop the charges. They were wealthy and well-connected, uncomfortable with the public embarrassment of a trial. I refused all offers, determined to see justice served. This isn't about money, I told Sarah. It's about making sure she can't do this to someone else. 4 months after the assault, Meghan accepted a plea deal, guilty to a lesser charge of misdemeanor assault, with community service, mandatory anger management and probation. It wasn't the full accountability I'd hoped for, but the conviction would be on her record, establishing a pattern if she ever assaulted someone else. Jason attended the sentencing hearing with me, gripping my hand as the judge addressed Meghan directly. "Miss Taylor, your actions were calculated and showed a disturbing lack of empathy. I sincerely hope this experience serves as a wake-up call." Outside the courthouse, reporters asked for my reaction. I hadn't planned to speak publicly, but looking at their cameras, I realized this was an opportunity to reach others who might be experiencing similar manipulation. "Abusers don't always look like monsters," I said carefully. "Sometimes they're charming, successful people who systematically isolate their targets. I hope my experience helps others recognize the warning signs before things escalate to violence." That evening, my phone lit up with messages from strangers who had seen the news story. People sharing similar experiences, thanking me for speaking out. Among them was an unexpected text from Courtney, Meghan's former maid of honor. "I should have warned you more clearly. I saw how she treated her ex. I was afraid to speak up. I'm sorry." Her message was a painful reminder that Meghan's pattern of behavior had been visible to others who had remained silent. It also reinforced my decision to press charges despite the personal cost. 6 months after the assault, my physical recovery was nearly complete. The headaches had subsided, my ribs had healed, and I was back at work full-time, leading the spinal cord injury program with renewed purpose. My experience as a patient had given me fresh insight into the frustrations and vulnerabilities my clients face daily. Jason had thrown himself into therapy, both our family sessions and individual counseling. He'd begun to recognize patterns in his relationships beyond Meghan. A tendency to seek validation through romantic partners, difficulty setting boundaries, a fear of disappointing others that made him susceptible to manipulation. "I think I need to be single for a while," he told me over one of our now regular Sunday brunches. "Really figure out who I am without someone else's expectations shaping me." "That sounds healthy," I agreed. "Though I have to admit, I've been a little worried about how isolated you've been lately." Some of Jason's friends had drifted away after the wedding cancellation, uncomfortable with the messy reality of what had happened or unwilling to admit they'd misjudged Meghan. Others, like Michael, had proven their loyalty and remained steadfast supports. "I'm working on building new connections," Jason assured me. "Joined a hiking group, reconnected with some college friends Meghan didn't approve of. It's a process." As for me, I had begun cautiously dating again, nothing serious, just coffee with a pediatric surgeon I'd met through work. The experience with Meghan had made me more vigilant about relationships in my own life, more attuned to subtle red flags I might have previously dismissed. Our family dynamics had shifted too. My mother had been my unwavering advocate throughout the ordeal, while my father had initially maintained his frustrating neutrality. The legal proceedings forced him to confront the reality of what had happened, and he eventually offered a stilted but sincere apology for doubting me. "I should have supported you unconditionally," he admitted during a rare visit to Boston. "I fell into my lawyer mindset instead of being your dad. I'm sorry, Ashley." Coming from my emotionally reserved father, those words meant more than he probably realized. The most unexpected support came from Valerie, the boutique owner. After testifying at a preliminary hearing, she had reached out to check on my recovery. We developed an unlikely friendship, meeting occasionally for coffee and conversations that wandered far beyond our shared traumatic experience. "You know," she told me during one such meeting, "I've seen a lot of brides in my 20 years in this business. The ones who treat people poorly during wedding planning are showing you who they really are. The stress doesn't create the behavior, it reveals it." Her words resonated deeply. Meghan hadn't become abusive because of wedding stress. The wedding had simply provided a context where her true nature could emerge without consequences, until that final escalation crossed a line even she couldn't charm her way out of. 1 year after the assault, Jason suggested we do something meaningful to mark the anniversary. Not a celebration, but an acknowledgement of how far we'd come. What did you have in mind? I asked. Remember how we used to go camping at Lake Winnipesaukee every summer as kids? He suggested. Just the two of us, unplugged from everything under the stars. I think we both could use that right now. The idea of returning to a cherished childhood tradition felt right. A reconnection to our foundation as siblings before all the complications of adult life intervened. We spent a weekend by the lake, hiking familiar trails, cooking simple meals over a campfire, and having conversations that stretched long into the night. On our last evening, sitting by the fire, Jason asked the question I could tell had been weighing on him. Do you think you'll ever completely trust me again, Ash? I took my time answering, watching the flames dance. I think trust isn't an all-or-nothing thing. It's built in layers over time. The trust we have now isn't the same as before. It's more careful, more conscious. But in some ways, maybe it's stronger because we've had to work for it. He nodded slowly. I can live with that. As we packed up the next morning, I realized something had shifted during our weekend away. The heaviness that had lingered between us for months had lightened. We weren't completely healed. Some scars would always remain. But we were moving forward, together but differently. The journey of recovery had taught me that healing isn't linear. It comes in unpredictable waves, with setbacks and breakthroughs, moments of clarity followed by days of doubt. But standing beside the lake that had witnessed so many chapters of our shared history, I finally believed that the worst was behind us. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we would face them with eyes wide open, wiser for having weathered this storm. And in that knowledge, I found a peace I hadn't thought possible in those dark days after the assault, when it seemed like everything that mattered had been irrevocably broken. 1 year became 2, then 3. Life moved forward in that unstoppable way it has, carrying us all along its current. 3 years after Megan assaulted me in that bridal boutique, I stood in my kitchen on a Sunday morning, making pancakes. Not just any pancakes, but our family recipe, with buttermilk and a hint of cinnamon. Some traditions deserve to be preserved. Jason sat at my counter, coffee in hand, scrolling through his phone with a relaxed ease that had been absent in the early days after the assault. Did you see Mom's text? She's thinking about selling the house. Really? That's a big step. I replied, flipping a perfectly golden pancake. How do you feel about it? He considered the question thoughtfully. It's time. Too much house for one person. And I think she's finally ready to build something new. Not just live with Dad's ghost in every room. This was the Jason I'd missed during those months, with Megan, reflective, insightful, able to discuss difficult subjects without deflection. His journey through therapy had transformed him in subtle but profound ways. He was more grounded now, more comfortable with vulnerability, less likely to seek external validation. Speaking of building something new, I said, sliding a plate toward him. How are things with Laura? A smile spread across his face at the mention of his girlfriend of 8 months. They'd met at a charity run, both volunteers rather than participants, and had taken things slowly, deliberately. Laura was nothing like Megan, warm, unpretentious, secure in herself without needing to diminish others. Really good, actually. We're talking about moving in together. That's a big step. I echoed his earlier words with a smile. It is. But it feels right this time. Healthy. He paused, forked midair. And before you ask. Yes, she knows everything about what happened with Megan. Full disclosure from the beginning. That transparency was perhaps the clearest sign of Jason's growth. The shame that had once made him defensive about his role in what happened had transformed into a commitment to honesty, however uncomfortable. My own path to healing had taken unexpected turns. The assault had initially made me withdraw, wary of new relationships and hypervigilant about potential manipulation. But gradually, with time and my own therapy, I'd found a new balance, cautious but not closed off, alert to red flags without seeing danger in every interaction. Professionally, the experience had deepened my work as a physical therapist. Having been a patient vulnerable in pain, dependent on others, gave me insights no training program could provide. I'd recently been promoted to Director of Rehabilitation Services, overseeing programs for patients recovering from various traumas. "How's the new research project going?" Jason asked, knowing I've been collaborating with neurologists on innovative approaches to trauma recovery. "Promising," I replied. "We're finding that combining physical therapy with psychological support significantly improves outcomes. Healing the body without addressing the mind only gets patients halfway there." That lesson had certainly proven true in my own recovery. The physical injuries had mended long before the psychological wounds began to scab over. Even now, there were moments when the memory would surface unexpectedly. A flash of remembered pain, a phantom sense of betrayal. But these moments grew rarer with each passing year. We had both received closure of sorts when Megan moved across the country after completing her community service. According to mutual acquaintances, she had reinvented herself in Los Angeles, working at a fashion magazine and dating a producer. I sometimes wondered if her new circle knew about her history, if anyone had warned them. But I had released myself from any responsibility for her actions. My obligation had been fulfilled when I pressed charges, creating an official record of what she had done. "Have you thought about what you'll say at the conference next month?" Jason asked, bringing me back to the present. I had been invited to speak at a national symposium on trauma-informed care, sharing insights from both professional and personal experience. "I'm still working on it," I admitted. "It's challenging to find the right balance, being honest about what happened without defining myself solely as a victim of assault." "You're anything but just a victim, Ash," Jason said firmly. "Look at everything you've built from that experience. The research, the support group, the way you've helped others recognize manipulation and abuse. You transformed something terrible into something meaningful." His words touched me deeply. The support group he mentioned had started small. Just a few patients I'd worked with who had experienced similar betrayals by loved ones. It had grown into a formal program, now operating in several hospitals across Boston. Creating that space for others to heal had been instrumental in my own recovery. Family gatherings, once awkward affairs in the aftermath of the assault, had gradually returned to something resembling normalcy. Last Thanksgiving had been the first that felt truly comfortable, no strained conversations, no careful avoidance of certain topics. My father, who had initially struggled to acknowledge the reality of what happened, had made genuine efforts to rebuild our relationship. "Dad called me yesterday," I told Jason, refilling his coffee. "He's coming to my talk at the conference." Jason's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Really? That's unexpected. I think he's finally ready to hear the whole story." Our father had always excelled at compartmentalizing uncomfortable truths, preferring logical solutions to emotional confrontations. His willingness to attend a talk where I would discuss my assault publicly represented significant progress. As we finished breakfast, I found myself reflecting on the strange, winding path that had led us here. 3 years ago, I couldn't have imagined sitting peacefully with my brother, discussing our lives with such openness. The betrayal had felt too catastrophic, the damage too complete. "What are you thinking about?" Jason asked, noticing my pensive expression. "Just how different things might have been," I replied honestly. "If there hadn't been a security camera, if Michael hadn't convinced you to watch the footage, if Valerie hadn't spoken up." Jason reached across the counter to squeeze my hand. "I think about that too. How close I came to losing you forever. Not just physically because of what Megan did, but losing our relationship, our history, everything. But you didn't." I reminded him gently. "We're here. Different, but here. Better in some ways," he suggested. "More honest." I nodded, acknowledging the truth in his words. The painful experience had stripped away pretenses, forcing us to rebuild our relationship on a more authentic foundation. We had learned to communicate more directly, to address conflicts rather than avoiding them, to recognize when outside influences were coming between us. I had also learned profound lessons about my own resilience, that I could withstand betrayal and still remain open to connection, that vulnerability and strength weren't opposing forces, but complementary aspects of wholeness. The assault had revealed my capacity to advocate for myself, to stand firm in my truth even when others doubted me. Most importantly, I'd learned that trauma reveals people's true characters. Not just the perpetrators, but everyone in the aftermath. Some friends had disappeared when things got messy. Others, like Kayla, had shown up in ways I could never have anticipated, becoming even more central to my life. New connections had formed with people who entered my story during the recovery, my therapist, members of the support group, even Valerie from the boutique. As Jason helped me clean up the breakfast dishes, I thought about what I would tell the audience at the upcoming conference. Perhaps the most valuable insight I could share was this. Healing doesn't mean returning to who you were before trauma. It means integrating the experience into a new version of yourself. One that carries the scars but isn't defined by them. One that has discovered strengths previously untested. You know what today is, right? Jason asked as he was preparing to leave. I nodded. It was exactly 3 years since the assault. A date that would always hold significance, even as its power diminished with time. I was thinking, he continued, instead of marking it as the anniversary of something terrible, maybe we could reframe it. Make it about celebration rather than remembrance. What did you have in mind? The support group. It's been incredibly successful, but you've been funding it mostly yourself. What if we established a formal foundation? Created something permanent that could help even more people? The suggestion took me by surprise, but the more I considered it, the more right it felt. Transforming the darkest day of our shared history into the beginning of something positive and lasting. There was a beautiful symmetry to it. I think that's perfect, I told him, feeling a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the morning sunlight streaming through my kitchen windows. A way to create meaning from what happened. As Jason left with a promise to research the legal requirements for establishing a nonprofit, I stood in my doorway watching him go, struck by how far we'd come. The road to healing had been longer and more complex than I could have imagined in those first dark days after the assault, with unexpected detours and obstacles along the way. But standing there in the gentle spring sunshine, I felt something I had once feared might be permanently lost. Peace. Not the naive peace of someone untouched by trauma, but the hard-won serenity of someone who has walked through fire and emerged transformed. The betrayal that had nearly destroyed us had ultimately revealed truths about ourselves and our relationship that might otherwise have remained hidden. In the crucible of that experience, something stronger had been forged, a resilience and authenticity that no future challenge could easily break. What was your most significant moment of betrayal? And how did you find your way through it? Share your story in the comments below. Remember that your vulnerability might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe for more insights on healing and resilience. And if you know someone struggling with the aftermath of betrayal, sharing this might help them feel less alone on their journey. Thank you for being part of this community where we can transform our hardest moments into opportunities for growth and connection.